Everyone at Haven Ridge Academy knew two things for certain. One, the rooftop cafeteria had the worst coffee in the history of human civilization. Two, Cale Ashford was the most insufferable alpha to ever walk through those iron gates. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that always fell perfectly across his forehead like it had signed a modeling contract. His eyes were a shade of gray that people described as stormy in hushed, admiring tones. Cale never smiled unless it was to make someone feel small. He was the top-ranked alpha in the entire academy, captain of the combat sports team, and the heir to the Ashford family, one of the oldest and most powerful alpha bloodlines in the country. In short, he was the kind of person who made the whole room shift when he entered it. And right now, he was staring down at Milo Yuen, like Milo was something he had found stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Milo Yuen was an Omega. That alone wouldn't have been a problem, except that Milo had just done the one thing no Omega was supposed to do in front of Cale Ashford. He had laughed at him. Not a nervous laugh, not a polite, cover-your-mouth, eyes-down laugh. A real, head-thrown back, completely uncontrolled laugh, because Cale had slipped on a puddle of orange juice in the middle of the crowded cafeteria courtyard, and the image of this terrifying alpha sitting on the floor with juice on his blazer was, objectively, the funniest thing Milo had seen in his entire life. Half the student body had gone silent. The other half were deciding very quickly whether to laugh or pretend to be dead. Milo wiped a tear from the corner of his eye. Sorry, are you okay? He extended his hand. Cale stared at it. Then he looked up at Milo, really looked at him. Small, bright-eyed, wearing a second-hand uniform that had clearly been patched at the left elbow. An Omega scholarship student. No status. No family name worth mentioning. Cherry blossom scent, which Cale's alpha senses picked up immediately and categorized as Omega, low rank, ignore. He got up on his own. He straightened his blazer. He looked Milo directly in the eye. And then Cale Ashford said the words that Milo Yuen would never forget. I'll never mark an Omega like you. He said it quietly, almost gently, which made it worse. The courtyard was dead silent. Milo's hand, still extended, slowly lowered. The laughter had completely left his face. He blinked once, twice, and then, to everyone's absolute shock, including Cale's, Milo's expression went from hurt to something else entirely. Something steady and calm. Good, Milo said simply. I never asked you to. He picked up his lunch tray from the table beside him, turned around and walked away. Nobody in that courtyard moved for a full 3 seconds. Cale stared at the space where Milo had been standing. Something odd happened in his chest. Like a door had been slammed in a room he didn't know existed. He ignored it. He was very good at ignoring things. He fixed his collar, looked at the crowd around him with flat, gray eyes, and said, "What are you all looking at?" Everyone suddenly found their food very interesting. What Cale didn't know, what nobody at Haven Ridge Academy knew, was that Milo Yuen had a secret. Well, he had several, but the most immediate one was that he had been matched. Not publicly, not officially. The documents sat in a sealed envelope in the headmaster's office, waiting for the formal ceremony at the end of the semester. Omega Alpha compatibility matches were conducted privately at Haven Ridge to prevent exactly the kind of social drama that had just unfolded in the cafeteria. Milo had opened his envelope 3 weeks ago, sitting alone in his dormitory room with a mug of chamomile tea and a feeling like the universe was playing a very long, very unfunny prank on him. His matched alpha was Cale Ashford. Of course it was. Milo had sat there for a long time. He had looked at the paper. He had looked at the ceiling. He had looked at the paper again. Then he had folded it neatly, placed it back in the envelope, slid it under his mattress, and made himself a second cup of tea. He had not told anyone. Because Milo Yuen had spent his entire scholarship life at this academy being underestimated, he had been looked through, talked over, dismissed, and smiled at with the kind of fake polite expression that people give to someone they have already decided does not matter. He was not going to hand Cale Ashford a reason to do the same. If the alpha didn't want him, fine. Milo would be just fine. He told himself this 7 times before he fell asleep. He was almost convinced by the fifth. The universe, as it turned out, had a very cruel sense of humor. 2 days after the orange juice incident, which had already become Academy legend by the way, someone had made a small drawing of it and pinned it to the student board, and nobody knew who did it, but Milo's roommate Park Seo was definitely not smiling about it. 2 days after that incident, Milo walked into his advanced literature seminar and found that the only remaining seat in the entire room was directly next to Cale Ashford. Milo stood in the doorway. The universe waited. Professor Lane looked up from her papers. "Mr. Yuan, please sit down. We're starting." Milo sat down. Cale did not look at him. He had a notebook open, a pen in hand, and an expression that said he had already decided this room did not contain anyone worth his attention. For exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds, everything was fine. Then Milo shifted in his seat, and his cherry blossom scent drifted, just slightly, in Cale's direction. Cale's pen stopped moving. He didn't turn his head, he just stopped, like someone had pressed pause on him. Milo, who was busy copying down the chapter references from the board, noticed nothing. Cale stared at his notebook. His alpha instincts were doing something deeply inconvenient, which was registering the omega beside him as, and this was the word that arrived without his permission. Close. Too close. Distractingly close. The scent was light and sweet and annoyingly pleasant, like someone had hidden flowers inside the walls of this seminar room, and Cale could not figure out how to make it stop. He had sat beside omegas before, plenty of times. This had never happened. He pressed his pen harder against the paper. "You're going to tear through the page," Milo said, without looking up from his own notes. Cale turned to look at him. "Excuse me? You're pressing too hard. You'll tear the paper." Milo glanced at his hand, then back at the board. "Not my notebook, so I don't actually care. Just, heads up." Cale stared at the side of Milo's face. Milo continued taking notes like a completely normal person who was not currently being stared at by the most dangerous alpha in the school. "You're very comfortable," Cale said. His tone was flat, almost curious, like he was describing a weather pattern. "I'm just taking notes," Milo said. "You're comfortable being near me. Most omegas aren't." Milo looked at him then, full eye contact. Cale noticed his eyes were a warm brown, like the last few pages of a well-read book. "Most omegas haven't been told to their face that you'd never mark them," Milo said pleasantly. "Honestly, it's kind of freeing. I don't have to try around you at all." He went back to his notes. Something happened in Cale's chest again. The door slamming thing. He faced forward. "Milo Yuan," he said. "Cale Ashford," Milo replied. "Don't make this weird. I'm taking notes in a literature class. You're the one doing the monologue." Professor Lane looked up from the front of the room. "Mr. Ashford, Mr. Yuan, is there something you'd like to share with the class?" "No," they said, at exactly the same time. The class shifted. Someone in the third row, a beta named Jonah who had watched the courtyard incident from beginning to end, slowly turned back around in his seat and mouthed, "Oh no." At nobody in particular. After class, Cale's best friend Leo Vance fell into step beside him in the hallway, holding an energy drink and looking entirely too entertained. "So," Leo said, "literature seminar. Don't. I heard you had a conversation. Drop it. With the Omega you publicly humiliated 2 days ago. Leo, who apparently told you that your lack of interest in him is, quote, free." Leo took a long sip of his energy drink. "Man, you got rejected by someone you rejected first. That's a new one." Cale stopped walking. "I did not get rejected. He's an Omega with no family name and a patched uniform. He should be trying to impress me." Leo looked at him for a long moment. "Has he, at any point, tried to impress you?" Cale didn't answer. Leo nodded slowly. Cool. This is going to be interesting." He took another sip. "You want half of this drink? You look like you need it." Cale took the drink. He did, unfortunately, need it. The library study rooms at Haven Ridge were bookable by anyone, first come, first served, and they held exactly 2 people comfortably, or 3 people if everyone decided to become good friends. Milo had booked room 4 every Tuesday for the past 3 months. He had a whole system. He arrived at 6:45 p.m., spread out his textbooks in a very specific order, made a cup of tea from the small corner kettle that was technically for staff but that everyone ignored, and studied in peace for 2 hours. It was the best part of his week. He arrived at 6:45 p.m. on Tuesday, opened the door of room 4, and found Cale Ashford sitting at the table with his own textbooks already open. They looked at each other. "I booked this room," Milo said. "So did I," Cale said. "I've booked it every Tuesday for 3 months. I booked it today." Milo looked at him. Cale looked back. Milo walked to the small whiteboard on the wall where study room reservations were written. There were 2 names, both for 7 p.m., room 4, Tuesday. He turned around. "The system double-booked us." "Yes." "One of us has to leave." "Yes." Neither of them left. Milo sighed very deeply, the way a person sighs when they have accepted that today is simply going to be one of those days. He walked in, set his bag on the table, and pulled out his books on the opposite side. "Fine," he said. 2 hours. We study. We don't talk." "I wasn't going to talk," Cale said. "Good. Good." For 40 minutes, they didn't talk. The room was quiet except for the sound of pages turning and pens moving. Milo made his tea. He did not offer Cale any, because Cale had not asked, and also because Cale had publicly insulted him 4 days ago and the tea was good, and Milo was not a saint. Then Milo opened his literature essay draft and made a very quiet, very private sound of frustration. Cale looked up. "What?" "Nothing. You made a noise. People make noises. What's wrong with your essay?" Milo looked at him. "Why do you care?" A pause. Cale's expression didn't change. "I don't. But you're going to keep making that noise and it'll bother me." Milo looked at his essay. Pride was a warm and comfortable feeling, but it was also, occasionally, the enemy of a passing grade. "My argument structure," he finally said. "Professor Lane says it's too emotional and not analytical enough." Cale held out his hand. "Let me see." "Why?" "Because I got a perfect score on the last analytical essay and you clearly need help." Milo stared at him. The absolute nerve of this person, the sheer, unashamed confidence, but also, and Milo was very annoyed by this fact, Cale's last essay had genuinely been exceptional. He had read it on the shared class board and refused to admit, even to himself, that it was good. He passed over the draft. Cale read it. His eyes moved quickly, efficiently. He picked up Milo's pen, without asking, just took it, and circled a paragraph near the middle. "Here. You're telling me how you feel about the character's decision. Don't. Tell me why the decision is structurally inevitable based on the text." "I know what analytical writing is," Milo said. "Then do it. You're a very annoying tutor." "I'm not your tutor. I'm someone who is sharing a room with you and would like the next hour to be quiet." Milo took his draft back. He looked at the circled paragraph. He rewrote the sentence. He rewrote the next one too. Cale went back to his own work. 15 minutes later, without looking up from his notebook, Cale said, "The new version is better." Milo blinked. He hadn't shown it to him. He looked up. Cale was reading his own book. His expression was completely neutral, but there was something small, something very small, at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, just the possibility of one. Milo looked back down at his essay. "Do not make this weird," he told himself. The corner of his mouth was also doing something very small and very traitor-like. Milo's roommate Park Seo had been described by various people at various times as perceptive, chaotic, a great person to have on your side, and the reason the dormitory's third-floor communal lounge now had a no karaoke after 11 p.m. rule posted on the wall. He was also, unfortunately for Milo, someone who noticed things. "You have tea breath," Park Seo said, looking up from his biology flashcards when Milo came back to the room. "I made tea. In the library." "Yes. Room 4. "Yes." Park Seo slowly put down his flashcards. "You look weird." "I look normal." "You look like someone who had a normal evening that was secretly not normal at all." Park Seo crossed his legs on his bed, giving Milo his full attention. "Spill." Cale Ashford was in my study room. The silence lasted approximately 1 second. Then Park Seo said, at a volume that was not appropriate for 9 p.m. dormitory hours. He was what? Shh. He was in your room? Study. Room and keep your voice down. The walls in this building are made of paper and gossip. Park Seo pressed both hands over his mouth, then removed them. What happened? We studied. That's it? That's it. Park Seo narrowed his eyes. He had very expressive eyes. They were currently expressing deep skepticism. Milo. He helped me with my essay structure. Park Seo made a sound that was not a word, but communicated several emotions at once. He helped you with your essay. The man who said, in front of 40 people, that he would never mark you. I remember what he said, thank you. Helped you with your essay. Park Seo lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Okay. I'm just a humble biology student, so maybe I'm missing something, but that is not normal Cale Ashford behavior. Maybe he was just being civil. Cale Ashford does not do civil. He does tolerate your existence from a distance. Milo put his bag down. He did not have a response to that because it was, honestly, accurate. He changed into his pajamas and climbed into bed and stared at the wall for a while. Seo, he said eventually. If someone was matched to an alpha who publicly said he'd never want them, what would you do? Park Seo was quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, how hypothetically are we talking? Very hypothetically. A long pause. I'd wait, Park Seo said, and I'd watch, because words said out of pride are different from what someone actually feels. And I've never seen an alpha of Cale's rank go out of his way to share a study room with someone he was genuinely indifferent to. Milo stared at the wall. Also, Park Seo added, I'd eat well and sleep 8 hours and look incredible every day just to make the alpha suffer a little. Spiritually. Milo laughed. It came out before he could stop it, bright and a little helpless. That's the spirit, Park Seo said. 3 things happened on Thursday that would later be remembered as important. First, it rained. Not a gentle cinematic drizzle. A full, aggressive, sky-opening downpour that started at exactly the moment Milo stepped out of the east building without his umbrella. He stood under the doorway overhang, looked at the sky, and thought very sincerely. Seriously. Second, Cale Ashford appeared beside him, also without an umbrella. They looked at each other. They looked at the rain. This was becoming a habit, and neither of them had consented to it. Stop appearing next to me, Milo said. I'm going to the dormitory block, Cale said. It's in the same direction as yours. You know where my dormitory is? Cale's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Just a fraction. Like someone had asked a question he hadn't prepared for. The scholarship block is in the east. I'm in the adjacent building. That is worryingly specific information. It's campus geography. The rain intensified. Third, Leo Vance ran past them holding his jacket over his head and shouted, I would rather be a wet dog than stay dry in your combined awkward silence. Goodbye, and disappeared into the downpour. Milo almost smiled. Almost. Cale reached into his bag and pulled out a compact umbrella. Milo stared at it. You had an umbrella. Yes. You said you didn't have one. I said I was going in the same direction. I didn't say anything about umbrellas. Milo looked at him. Cale looked at the rain. And then, without making eye contact, Cale opened the umbrella and tilted it slightly to the left, toward Milo. Not a lot. Not dramatically. Just enough. Milo's brain did several things at once. His chest did something that he deeply disagreed with. This doesn't mean anything, Cale said. His voice was flat, like he was reading from a terms and conditions document. Obviously, Milo said. They walked to the dormitory block in the rain, sharing the umbrella, not talking, not quite touching, and absolutely not acknowledging that both of them were walking slightly slower than necessary. Park Seo was looking out the dormitory window when they arrived. He watched Milo and Cale separate at the building junction with zero fanfare and maximum dignity. Then Park Seo turned away from the window, picked up his phone, and sent Leo Vance one message. They shared an umbrella. Leo responded in 4 seconds. I know I was there. I need a towel, and also to scream. Cale Ashford had a journal. Nobody knew this. He would have preferred to keep it that way. But the journal existed, leather-bound, tucked behind his economics textbooks, and it contained, among several deeply unprofessional entries written by a person who was supposed to have his life together, the following recent additions. The Omega in my literature seminar corrected my posture twice today. Not my writing, my posture. I was sitting fine. He made tea in the study room and did not offer me any. I was not bothered. I am noting this for documentation purposes only. He has a small scar on his right hand. I don't know why I noticed this. His laugh sounds like something I can't describe what I tried for a while and gave up. I said something cruel to him 6 days ago in front of 40 people, and he just walked away. He didn't cry or argue or look for sympathy. He just walked away. I have thought about this every single day since. There was a letter too. He had started it 3 days ago. He had not finished it. He had not sent it. It began, Milo. That was as far as he'd gotten. For 3 days. He didn't know what came after got. Milo. He had never written a letter like this before. He had written formal correspondence, academic arguments, once a very stiff apology note to a professor. He had never written something that started with a person's name and was followed by the terrifying blankness of actually meaning it. His scent glands were doing something strange too, something that his body had never done without his permission before. He was an alpha, a highly trained, top-ranked Ashford bloodline alpha. His responses were supposed to be controlled, deliberate, intentional. His scent lately had been doing a thing where it shifted slightly warmer whenever Milo UN was within 30 feet of him. Not obviously, not enough for anyone to register it consciously, but Kale registered it, and it was inconvenient. He picked up the journal. He stared at the half letter. He wrote one more line. I don't know what I'm doing. He closed the journal. He put it back behind the economics textbooks. He went to sleep. He did not sleep well. Part 7. The Academy Festival and the Ferris Wheel. The Haven Ridge Autumn Festival was the one event per year where the Academy's strict social hierarchy visibly relaxed. There were food stalls, game booths, a small temporary Ferris wheel that the engineering club built and that was, reassuringly, never actually collapsed in 11 years of operation. There was music and lights, and the kind of warm, crowded atmosphere where people who would otherwise never speak to each other somehow ended up talking. It was Milo's favorite day of the semester. He arrived with Park Seo and their friend Dara, a fellow scholarship student who was doing her 4th year in architectural design and had already won 2 national awards and was constitutionally incapable of being impressed by anything, which Milo found deeply refreshing. Takoyaki, Dara said, pointing. Yes, Milo agreed. Ferris wheel later? Park Seo suggested. Yes, they both said. They were halfway through their takoyaki when Leo Vance appeared, somehow eating 3 festival snacks at the same time, with Cale Ashford 2 steps behind him, wearing a dark jacket and an expression that said he had not entirely wanted to come to this festival and had been emotionally ambushed into it. Leo saw Milo. His entire face lit up. Milo, friends, hello, great, we're all here together. What a coincidence. No thoughts, just vibes. Let's get on the Ferris wheel as a group. He said all of this in one breath. Dara looked at Leo, then at Cale, then at Milo. Do you two know each other? Vaguely, Milo said. We share a literature seminar, Cale said. Vaguely, Milo said again, staring straight ahead. Dara looked between them with the calm, analytical eye of someone who designs structures for a living and could immediately see where the stress fractures were. She said nothing. She ate her takoyaki. She texted Park Seo later. Something is happening between your roommate and the scary alpha. Park Seo responded. I know, right? The Ferris wheel line moved quickly. By some arrangement that nobody explicitly made but that Leo very much quietly engineered, Milo and Cale ended up in the same gondola. The door closed. The wheel lifted them slowly upward. The festival spread out below them, warm lights, music, tiny people moving between stalls. The autumn sky above them was deep blue, edged with the last pale gold of sunset. It was genuinely, objectively beautiful. Leo did this on purpose, Milo said. Yes, Cale said. He's not subtle. He has never been subtle in his life. I've known him for 6 years. Milo almost smiled. Why do you keep him around? Something shifted in Kale's expression, just slightly. Because he's the only person who talks to me like a person instead of an alpha title. Milo looked at him. That was unexpectedly honest. More honest than anything Kale had said to him before. That must be lonely, Milo said, before he could stop himself. Kale looked out at the view. I don't think about it. That's not the same as it not being true. A pause. No, Kale said quietly, it's not. The gondola reached the top of the wheel and stopped for a moment, the way Ferris wheels always do, giving you one perfect suspended second above everything. The wind moved gently. Below them, someone laughed very loudly at a game booth. I'm sorry, Kale said. Milo turned to look at him. Kale was looking at his own hands. His expression was unreadable, the way it always was, but there was something in the set of his jaw that looked like it was costing him something. What I said in the courtyard. I'm sorry. Milo was quiet for a moment. Why did you say it? He asked. Kale looked up. His gray eyes met Milo's brown ones. Because you laughed at me, and I wasn't used to that. So you tried to make me feel small. Yes. Did it work? Kale looked at him for a long moment. No, he said. You walked away. The Ferris wheel began to descend. Apology noted, Milo said. His voice was careful. Not warm, not cold. Somewhere in between. Not accepted? Kale asked. Milo tilted his head. I'll think about it. And then, quietly, privately, there in the moving gondola with the festival lights below them and the evening sky above them, Milo Yuen smiled. It was small and real and entirely involuntary. Kale looked away quickly, before Milo could catch him looking. But it was a very close thing. 2 weeks after the Ferris wheel, the headmaster's office sent individual letters. They arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under dormitory doors before breakfast. Milo found his on the floor and immediately recognized the official seal on the envelope. The formal compatibility announcements. Every Omega and Alpha who had been privately matched would receive their official letter simultaneously, and the Academy would post the full list in the main hall by noon. After noon, the match was public knowledge. Before noon, for exactly those few hours, it was still just between the person and their letter. Milo sat on the edge of his bed. Parkseo was already awake, holding his own letter. Park was a beta, so his was a different kind of correspondence, regarding academic placement for next year. He looked at Milo's face. He put down his own letter. You already know what's in it, Parkseo said quietly. Yes. You've known for a while. Since the beginning of semester. Parkseo was quiet for a moment. And you didn't tell him? No. Because I didn't want him to be near me because of a document, Milo said. I wanted to know if anything was actually there, before the paper made it official, before people's behavior changed because of a match status. Parkseo was quiet. Then, was there anything actually there? Milo looked at the sealed envelope in his hands. He thought about the study room, the umbrella in the rain, the Ferris wheel at the top of the world, and Kale Ashford saying, I'm sorry. Like it was the hardest word he had ever assembled. He thought about the way Kale had looked away just before he could be caught looking. I think so, Milo said. Maybe. And Kale doesn't know the match exists yet. His letter arrived this morning the same as mine. They looked at each other. Milo, Parkseo said, with great feeling. At noon, that man is going to see your name on that list and lose his entire mind. Possibly. Definitely. Parkseo grabbed Milo's arm. Please, for the love of everything, be somewhere visible when he reads it. I want to witness this with my whole chest. Milo looked at the envelope. His name was on it in the Academy's formal font, small and neat and unsuspecting. He slid his thumb under the seal. He already knew what was inside. But reading it again, seeing his name and Kale's name on the same official document, pressed together by institutional ink, did something to his chest that no amount of emotional preparation had quite covered. Compatibility match, Milo Yuen, send. Match grade, exceptional. Milo folded the letter carefully. He placed it on his desk. He got up. He changed into his nicest uniform. He did his hair. Park Seo watched all of this with shining eyes. Today, Park Seo said, very quietly, is going to be a very important day. Maybe, Milo said. He picked up his bag. He opened the dormitory door. He looked back once. Seo, he said, whatever happens, I decided a long time ago that I'm not going to beg anyone to want me, not even a match. Park Seo nodded. His expression was serious now, under all the excitement. I know. So if he sees that list and walks away, that's okay. I know, Park Seo said again. But Milo paused. I've watched him look for you in every room he walks into for the past 2 weeks. Every room. He thinks he's being subtle. Park Seo picked up his own letter. He is not subtle. Milo was quiet for a moment. Then he walked out the door and toward whatever was coming. The main hall at Haven Ridge Academy was a tall, stone-walled room with long bulletin boards running down both sides. On normal days, it smelled like old wood and floor polish, and the faint anxiety of students who had forgotten about upcoming exams. On match announcement day, it smelled like an emotional disaster waiting to happen. By 11:55 a.m., a quiet crowd had gathered near the central board where the list would be posted. Not everyone who was matched was there. Some students had chosen to wait in their rooms. Some had sent friends as scouts. One girl in the second year had reportedly locked herself in the bathroom with a timer set for 12:15 and refused to come out before then. Milo stood near the east window with Dara, who was eating a sandwich with the calm energy of someone who had already made peace with all outcomes. You're not nervous, Dara said. It was not a question. I'm very nervous, Milo said. You don't look it. I've been practicing my neutral face since the beginning of semester. Dara nodded, impressed. That's a life skill. She took another bite of her sandwich. Cale Ashford is standing at the back left corner, by the way. He arrived 8 minutes ago. He has looked at you once every 90 seconds approximately. Milo kept his eyes on the board. You've been counting. I'm an architect. I observe spacing and patterns. It's professional. Milo almost laughed. At exactly noon, a junior staff member in an academy jacket walked to the board and pinned up the printed list. It was 1 sheet of paper, 2 columns, 22 names in pairs. The crowd moved forward. Milo did not move. He already knew what it said. He stood at the window and watched other people read it, watched the quiet ripple of reactions, a sharp intake of breath here, a soft smile there, one second-year boy who grabbed his friend's arm and turned an extraordinary shade of pink. Then he heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like a change in the air. He turned. Cale Ashford was standing at the board. He had clearly just read the list. He was standing completely still, one hand raised and not quite touching the paper, and his expression, for the first time since Milo had known him, was completely unguarded. He looked stunned. Not angry, not cold, just stunned. Like someone had handed him an answer to a question he had not known he was asking. His gray eyes moved from the board and found Milo across the room. They stayed there. Milo held his gaze. He did not look away. He did not smile or wave or make any of it easier. He waited. He had spent an entire semester waiting. He could wait another 30 seconds. Cale took a step toward him, then another. People moved out of his path, the way they always did, but Cale wasn't looking at them. He walked straight across the hall toward the east window, where Milo stood with his hands loose at his sides and his expression perfectly, stubbornly calm. Cale stopped in front of him. Dara took a quiet step sideways. She was still eating her sandwich. She did this very discreetly, like a nature documentary cameraman who had found something important and was determined not to disturb it. How long? Cale said. His voice was low. Just for Milo. Since the beginning of semester, Milo said. Cale closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them, there was something in his face that looked like a person doing very rapid mental arithmetic and arriving at a number that was deeply humbling. You knew. When I said what I said in the courtyard, I knew. And you still, he stopped, ran a hand through his hair. You let me. I let you be exactly who you were, Milo said. His voice was even. careful. And then I waited to see who you could become. The hall was doing its best to mind its own business, and was failing completely. Leo Vance, who had materialized from somewhere near the board with his match letter in one hand and an expression of absolute joy barely contained behind a polite face, had located Park Seo in the crowd and was standing next to him with the focused stillness of a person watching the most important sports match of his life. Park Seo was not eating. This was historically unprecedented. He was just watching, one hand pressed over his mouth. Kale looked at Milo for a long moment. His jaw worked once, twice. He was clearly assembling a sentence that was giving him significant trouble. "The things I said to you," he started. "You apologized for those. On a Ferris wheel, that's not enough." "No," Milo agreed. "It's not." Another silence. Then Kale did something nobody in the main hall, in the entire academy, probably, had ever seen him do. He reached out and took Milo's hand. Not dramatically, not with a grand speech, just quietly, carefully, the way you pick up something you're worried about dropping. "I'd like to earn enough," Kale said, "if you'll let me." Milo looked at their hands, then up at Kale's face. "You have very bad manners," Milo said. "I know. And a terrible first impression." "I know. And you owe me approximately 1 semester's worth of apology tea." Kale blinked. "Tea? You helped yourself to my study room. You took my pen without asking, and you never once offered me anything in return. Tea. Many cups strong, not sweet." A pause. And then, quietly, like it wasn't used to being out in the open, Kale Ashford smiled. A real one. Small and a little crooked and entirely unguarded. "Strong, not sweet," he said. "I can do that." From across the room, Park Seo grabbed Leo's arm. Leo grabbed back. Neither of them made a sound. They were both, separately, trying very hard not to cry, which was impressive, considering neither of them was the type. They both failed. Leo blamed allergies. Park Seo blamed the lighting. The next morning, Milo woke up early and found a paper cup of tea sitting outside his dormitory door, hot, correctly brewed, with a small folded note underneath that said, in Kale's handwriting, "Strong, not sweet." Milo stood in his doorway in his pajamas, holding the cup, hair still a disaster, and stared at the note for a while. Then he went back inside, sat on his bed, and drank the tea slowly, while Park Seo snored peacefully on the other side of the room. It was a very good cup of tea. He chose not to examine this too carefully. What Kale had also not said, in the main hall, was that he had gone back to his dormitory room after reading the list, and sat on his bed for a very long time. He had taken out his journal. He had opened it to the half-finished letter that began, "Milo." And this time he had finished it. He wrote for 40 minutes. He filled 2.5 pages. He wrote about the orange juice incident and what had actually happened in his chest when Milo walked away. Not anger, which he had told himself at the time, but something closer to panic. The unfamiliar, inconvenient sensation of mattering to someone who then chose not to need him. He wrote about the study room and how the 2 hours of quiet beside Milo had been the most settled he had felt in years. He wrote about the umbrella and how he had specifically checked the weather forecast that morning and still told himself he wasn't planning anything. He wrote about the Ferris wheel and how Milo's small, involuntary smile at the top of it had done something to his chest that no amount of alpha training had prepared him for. He wrote, "I have spent my entire life being told that alphas lead and omegas follow, and rank is everything. I believed this because it was easier than questioning it. Then someone laughed at me when I fell down, and when I tried to hurt them for it, they said good and walked away, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it since." He wrote, "I think I have been wrong about a great number of things." He did not send the letter, but he kept it. He did not put it behind the economics textbooks. This time, he left it open on his desk, the way you leave a window open on a day that finally feels like it might become something good. He also, at 6:30 a.m., he had to look up how to use the floor's small communal kettle because he had never used it before. He always had coffee. The process took longer than expected. He burned himself once on the lid, which was exactly the kind of thing that happened when alphas attempted to operate appliances they had been ignoring their whole lives. He left the cup outside Milo's door before anyone was awake to witness the alpha heir of the Ashford family standing in the scholarship dormitory hallway in his uniform, checking the tea temperature. Leo Vance, who had been returning from an early training run, witnessed the whole thing. He kept walking. He looked straight ahead. He smiled at the ceiling of the corridor for the next 30 seconds. He texted Park Seo. He made him tea and left it outside his door. Park Seo replied within 4 seconds. I heard him boil the kettle at 6 a.m. I was pretending to sleep. I knew it. 3 days after the match announcement, everything fell apart. Not because of Milo, not because of Kale, because of the Ashford family. It arrived as a formal letter, delivered not to Kale's dormitory but directly to the headmaster's office. Kale was called in on a Wednesday morning and handed an envelope with the Ashford family seal on it. He read it standing in the headmaster's office, while Headmaster Yoon sat behind his desk and looked at the wall. The letter was from Kale's father. It said, in the precise and bloodless language of a man who had been writing formal correspondence for 30 years, that the Ashford family did not recognize the Academy's match assignment. It said that Kale's match had been arranged, by the family, privately, months ago, with the second son of the Renver family, another old bloodline Alpha clan. It said that Kale was expected to formally decline the Academy match within the week and return home at the end of semester to finalize the Renver arrangement. It also said, near the bottom, in the same precise language, the matched Omega, a scholarship student, no verified bloodline, is not appropriate for the Ashford name. We trust you understand this, Kale. Kale stood very still. He read the letter twice. Then he folded it. He placed it back in the envelope. He looked at Headmaster Yoon. Did Milo receive a copy of this? He asked. No, the headmaster said. The family only contacted this office. Good, Kale said. Keep it that way. He walked out. He did not go to class. He went to the rooftop, which was empty at this hour because the terrible coffee was only served at lunch, and he stood at the railing and looked at the campus below him and thought about his father's letter in a very specific way. The way you think about something you have already decided is wrong but are still, out of habit, giving one fair minute of consideration before you act. The minute passed. Kale took out his phone and called his father. The call lasted 11 minutes. It was not a warm conversation. The Ashford family did not do warm conversations. They did structured, hierarchical exchanges of information and expectation. Kale let his father speak for the first 4 minutes. He listened to all of it, the bloodline argument, the status argument, the Renver arrangement and its social and financial logic, the part about how the Academy match was a formality that high-rank alphas routinely declined. Then Kale said, calmly, no. His father said something. Kale said, I'm not declining the match. His father said something longer. Kale said, I know what the Ashford name means. I've known my whole life. And I'm telling you that the match stands. His father said something that was probably meant to sound final. Kale said, the Omega's name is Milo Yuan. He is the top literature student in his cohort, a scholarship recipient, and the only person at this academy who has told me the truth when nobody else would. I trust him more than I trust the Renver family, and I've never even met the Renver family. A pause. I'll call again next week. He hung up. He stood on the rooftop for another few minutes. Then he went back downstairs, walked to the library, found Milo in study room 4 at his usual table with his usual tea, and sat down across from him. Milo looked up. He registered Kale's expression, carefully neutral, but underneath it something tight and unresolved, and he closed his textbook. What happened? Milo asked. Kale looked at him. He had spent 11 minutes on that phone call. He had made his decision before he even dialed. He was not going to make Milo carry this. Nothing that changes anything, Kale said. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters right now. Milo looked at him for a long moment. He had a very good sense for when people were protecting him. He had been on the receiving end of it from Park Seo for years, and he had always found it simultaneously touching and annoying. Kale. Milo. Tell me. And Kale, who had never in his life told anyone a difficult thing before he was ready, looked at the person across the table from him. This small, stubborn, tea-drinking Omega who had walked away from him once and rebuilt his whole understanding of himself in the process, and told him about the letter. All of it? Milo listened without interrupting. When Kale finished, Milo was quiet for a while. Then he said, "What did you say to your father?" "No." Milo looked at him. "Just no? And some other things." "Were the other things about me?" "Yes." Milo looked at the table. He looked at his tea. He pressed his lips together in a way that was clearly fighting something down. "You didn't have to do that," he said, and his voice came out a little unsteady at the end. "I know," Kale said. "It's going to cause problems." "Yes. Your family, my family," Kale said, "has had 30 years to teach me what matters. They spent most of it on bloodlines and social standing." He looked at Milo. "I'm making a different list." Milo stared at him. His eyes were doing something bright and a little dangerous, the way eyes do when a person is fighting very hard to stay composed. "You are," Milo said slowly, "incredibly dramatic for someone who barely talks." Kale blinked. Milo laughed. It came out just like it had in the courtyard, uncontrolled, head slightly back, completely real. And this time, Kale did not try to make him feel small. This time, something in Kale's chest opened like a room that had been locked for a very long time, and he let the sound of it in. The thing about Leo Vance was that he was deeply, aggressively supportive, and he applied this energy the way a golden retriever applies itself to everything, with full commitment and no sense of personal boundaries. When Kale told him about the family letter, Leo listened with unusual seriousness. He did not interrupt. He waited until Kale finished. Then he said, "Okay, I have 3 things to say. Go ahead. 1. You did the right thing. 2. Your father is going to come around eventually, because deep down he is not a bad man. He's just a stubborn one who has never been told no by his own son, and that shock takes time to process. 3. Leo held up a finger. Have you told Milo that you've been writing letters to him in your journal for a month? Kale stared at him. I may have seen the journal once by accident, Leo said. You went through my things. The journal was open on your desk. I was returning a textbook I borrowed. I am a victim of circumstance. Leo waved a hand. The point is, have you told him? No. Kale, it was private. It was beautiful is what it was. The bit about his laugh sounding like something you can't describe. Leo pressed a hand to his chest. I am a simple man. I felt things. Kale looked at the ceiling with the expression of someone reconsidering all of his life choices, up to and including his choice of best friend. Tell him, Leo said. Not the journal. You don't have to show him the journal, but tell him what's in it. People need to hear things out loud sometimes, Kale. You can't just feel enormously about someone and expect them to know. Kale was quiet. Can I also say, Leo added, that Milo's friend Park Seo is very smart and very funny, and we have been texting for 2 weeks, and I think, please stay on topic. I'm just saying, there's potentially a very fun situation developing on multiple fronts. Leo, tell him what you feel, out loud, with your mouth, words, in order. Leo stood up and pointed at the door. Go. I'll be here emotionally vibrating if you need me. Kale stood. He picked up his jacket. Leo, he said, at the door. Yeah. Park Seo is a good person. Leo's entire face did something enormous. I know, right? Kale closed the door behind him. He could still hear Leo celebrating through the wall. He walked away before it got worse. It happened on a Friday night, 2 weeks after the match announcement. Milo and Kale had reached a kind of quiet, careful rhythm by then. They still studied together on Tuesdays. Kale still left tea outside Milo's door on certain mornings. Not every morning, but enough that Milo had started waking up slightly earlier on the days he thought it might appear. They had eaten lunch together twice, which had caused a significant amount of social commentary from the rest of the student body, most of which Milo ignored with practiced ease. It was not fast. It was not a dramatic declaration. It was 2 people learning how to be near each other without armoring up, which was, for both of them, something that had to be practiced. On Friday evening, they were in the library. Milo had fallen asleep at the study table. He did this sometimes near the end of the week. He kept long hours. Scholarship students at Havenridge had more to prove and less grace for stumbling, and Milo pushed himself consistently harder than he let anyone see. He had fallen asleep over his notes, head on his folded arms, cherry blossom scent soft and drifting in the quiet room. Cale had been reading across the table. He noticed when Milo's pen stopped moving. He looked up. He watched Milo sleep for a moment. The careful composure that Milo maintained in every waking interaction was gone. He looked younger, less defended. He had a small ink smudge on the side of his hand that had transferred to his cheek. Cale reached across the table very carefully and closed Milo's textbook so the pages wouldn't crease. He sat back. He went back to his reading. He stayed until the library's closing announcement, at which point he woke Milo up by saying his name twice in a low voice, and Milo surfaced with the slightly disoriented expression of someone who had been somewhere warm and was now being asked to return to the world. "Library's closing," Cale said. Milo blinked, looked at the closed textbook, looked at Cale. "Did you close my book?" The pages would have bent. "Thank you." Milo rubbed his eyes. He noticed the ink smudge on his own hand, and then looked at Cale, alert. "Is there ink on my face?" "No," Cale said. He was already packing his bag. There was ink on Milo's face. Cale had considered telling him and then not told him, and he was not going to examine why. They walked back toward the dormitory block together. It was cold out and late, and the campus was almost empty. Their footsteps sounded clear on the stone path. At the junction where their buildings split off, they stopped. This was the point where, for the last 2 weeks, they had said a quiet good night and gone their separate ways. It was a comfortable enough routine. Safe. Tonight, Cale didn't move right away. Milo looked at him. "I don't want to say good night yet," Cale said. He said it the same way he said most things, directly, without performing it, like a fact he had checked and found to be accurate. Milo considered this. "We could walk the long way," he said. They walked the long way. It added 20 minutes. They talked about the literature essay draft, about the strange noise the East Building's heating system made after 10 p.m., about whether the rooftop coffee was actually the worst in history or just the worst on campus. Milo had a theory. Cale had a counter-argument. Neither of them was going to resolve it tonight. When they finally arrived at the junction again, Milo stopped. "Cale," he said. Milo looked at him in the quiet dark of the campus path, and then he stepped forward and, carefully, deliberately, the way he did most things, he tucked himself against Cale's side. Just that, just briefly. His head near Cale's shoulder, one hand loosely at Cale's jacket sleeve. A small, warm thing. Cale went completely still. Then one arm came up and settled around Milo's shoulders, light and careful, like a question being asked rather than answered. They stood like that for a moment. That was too short and exactly long enough. Milo stepped back. His cheeks were warm. He was not going to acknowledge this. "Good night," he said. "Good night," Cale said. His voice came out slightly lower than usual. He was not going to acknowledge this either. Milo walked to his dormitory. He did not look back. He absolutely knew Cale was watching him go. He could feel it between his shoulder blades like a warm hand. He went upstairs, opened the door, and found Park Seo awake with a cup of noodles and a knowing expression. "Don't say anything," Milo said. "I wasn't going to say anything," Park Seo said. "Good. I was simply going to observe that you are approximately 3 shades pinker than when you left. Good night, Seo." "Good night, Milo." On Saturday morning, Milo woke up to 3 things. 1. Park Seo had made actual breakfast for once in his life. Eggs, toast, orange juice. Milo stood in the doorway of their small dormitory kitchen area and stared at this like it might disappear. "Who are you?" Milo said. "What have you done with Park Seo?" "Leo is coming over to study later," Park Seo said. "It's not relevant." "It is deeply relevant. Eat your eggs." 2. There was no tea outside the door this morning. Milo noticed this while trying not to notice it. He was not going to count teacups. He was a rational person. 3. There was a message on his phone, from Cale, sent at 7:14 a.m. "Can we talk today? Not by letter, in person." Milo looked at this message. He thought about what Leo had apparently said to Kale, which Park Seo had relayed to him via text at 11 p.m. last night, because Park Seo and Leo had also apparently been talking for 2 weeks, and Milo felt very informed and very ambushed. He typed back, "Library at noon?" The reply came in under a minute. Yes. The library at noon was quiet. Saturday meant most students were out on campus or in the town. Room 4 was empty. Milo got there first. He made tea. He set out 2 cups. Kale arrived 2 minutes after noon. He looked at the 2 cups. He sat down. "You made me tea," he said. "Strong, not sweet," Milo said. "Equal terms." Kale looked at his cup. He wrapped his hands around it. For a moment he said nothing, and Milo let him not say anything, because he had learned that Kale was someone who needed a breath before the real thing. Then Kale said, "I've been writing letters to you." Milo went still. "Not sending them, writing them, in my journal, since around the 2nd week." Kale kept his eyes on the tea, things I didn't know how to say directly, about the study room, and the rain, and the Ferris wheel. About what you looked like when you walked away from me in the courtyard and how I couldn't stop thinking about it. He paused. About the way you laugh. Milo said nothing. He was holding his teacup with both hands and looking at Kale with an expression that was doing several things at once. "I know I started this badly," Kale said. "I know I said something I can't unsay. I've been trying to work out how to make that worth less than what came after it." He looked up. "I'm not very good at this. I don't have a lot of practice being wrong, because people don't usually tell me when I am. You told me, and then you waited, and you let me come to it on my own." A pause. "I think that was very kind, considering." "It wasn't kindness," Milo said. His voice was quiet. "I was protecting myself." "I know. You deserve to." Kale looked at him steadily. "I'm asking now, not because of the match document, not because of my family or the academy or anything outside this room. I'm asking because I have looked for you in every room I've walked into for 2 months, and I didn't understand why until recently, and now I do, and I don't want to pretend I don't." The room was very quiet. Milo set his tea down. He looked at Kale for a long moment. This careful, proud, slowly opening person who had been cruel once, and had spent every day since making something different out of himself. "You are still very dramatic," Milo said. "I'm being honest. It comes out dramatic. You really wrote letters?" "Yes. About my laugh." Kale's jaw moved slightly. "Among other things." Milo leaned forward on the table. "Let me see one." "Absolutely not." "Kale, they're private. You just told me about them." "Telling and showing are different things." Kale picked up his tea with the expression of someone who had said more than planned and was drawing a firm administrative line. "I'll tell you what's in them. Over time, in order." Milo looked at him. "Over time, in order." "Yes. That's a very long project." Kale met his eyes. Something in his expression was open in a way it had not been 3 months ago, open in a way it clearly hadn't been in much longer than that. "I know," he said. "I'd like to start it anyway." Milo looked at his hands. He looked at Kale. He thought about a sealed envelope under a mattress and 7 self-reassurances before sleep and a semester of waiting to see who someone could become. "Okay," Milo said, quietly. "Surely." Kale breathed out like he'd been holding something heavy. "But," Milo added, "if you ever say something like that to anyone else the way you said it to me in the courtyard, I won't. I'm serious." "So am I." Kale looked at him. "I know what it costs. I know now." The afternoon light came through the library window and landed between them on the table. They stayed and finished their tea. The Ashford situation did not resolve quickly. Kale's father called again the following Wednesday and Thursday. On Friday, he sent a second letter, this one longer, and included what appeared to be a financial argument that Kale read, set on his desk next to the unfinished letter that was now, actually, finished and ignored. On Saturday, something unexpected happened. Kale's older sister Vera arrived at Haven Ridge. Vera Ashford was 25, worked in architectural law in the city, had escaped their father's orbit by being too competent to argue with, and was, by general consensus, the only person on earth who could talk to Kale Ashford like he was a slightly difficult younger sibling and get away with it. She arrived in a sleek gray car, walked through the academy front gates, and found Kale in the courtyard. "Father is being dramatic," she said, by way of greeting. "Yes," Kale said. "He called me 6 times this week. I know. He thinks you're throwing away the family's credibility over a—" "Don't say what he said." Vera stopped. She looked at her brother. She had not seen him in 4 months, and the person standing in front of her had something different in his face, something less closed off, less like a wall and more like a door that had recently been opened for the first time. She filed this observation away. "Tell me about him," she said instead. Kale told her. He did it economically, the way he did most things. But he told her about the orange juice incident, and exactly what he had said, and exactly what had happened next. He told her about the study room, and the umbrella, and the Ferris wheel. He told her about the family letter and the phone call. Vera listened. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You said no to Father." "Yes. You've never said no to Father." "I know." Vera looked at him with an expression that was trying very hard not to be proud. She wasn't fully succeeding. "Okay," she said. "I'll talk to him. I won't fix it in a day. He'll need time, but I'll talk to him." "You don't have to." "Kale." Vera put one hand on his arm. "You're my brother, and you look like someone who has, for the first time in your life, figured out what you actually want." She squeezed his arm once. "I'll talk to him." Kale looked at her. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. Vera met Milo before she left. This was not planned. They encountered each other in the main hall when Milo was heading to his afternoon class, and Vera was heading to the exit, and Kale introduced them with approximately the same energy as a person diffusing something delicate. Vera shook Milo's hand and looked at him with the frank, evaluating gaze of someone who had spent years in a room full of lawyers. "He's told me about you," she said. "Good things, I hope," Milo said. "He told me you called him dramatic after he confessed something to you. He was being dramatic." Vera's mouth curved slightly. She glanced at Kale, then back at Milo. "He needs that," she said, quiet and serious. "Someone who will say so." She left. Milo looked at Kale. "I like her. She'll be insufferable about this forever," Kale said. "Just so you know." "Worth it," Milo said. He started walking toward his class. "Tea on Tuesday?" "Study room 4, Kale confirmed. "Don't take my pen this time. I'll bring my own. That's all I've ever asked." Kale watched him go down the hallway. Leo appeared at his elbow from absolutely nowhere, because Leo had a supernatural ability to materialize at significant moments. "So," Leo said. "Not now, Leo. You look like a person who just had his sister meet the person he, not now, is obviously completely gone for." "Leo." Leo held up both hands. "I'm just saying, objectively, from the outside." He paused. "Park Seo and I made a bet about when you'd actually tell Milo you liked him, and I lost, by the way. I said November, he said October. He was right." Kale stared at him. "So technically," Leo continued, "you owe him a win." "I don't owe Park Seo anything. You owe him the emotional piece of having been right." Leo patted Kale's shoulder. "Think about it." He walked away looking pleased with himself. Kale stood in the hallway. He had the very specific feeling of being surrounded by people who found his life extremely entertaining. He decided this was, probably, not the worst thing. The last day of semester at Haven Ridge was a quiet kind of beautiful. The December cold had settled into the campus properly by then. Frost on the stone paths in the morning, warm light from the hall windows in the evening, the smell of someone's mulled cider from the dormitory kitchen drifting all the way up to the 3rd floor. Milo woke up early. Park Soo was already awake, sitting at his desk with his bags half-packed and a mug of instant coffee that smelled aggressively wrong. He looked up when Milo stirred. They exchanged one of those looks that roommates develop after months together, the kind that means, "We both know what today is, and neither of us is going to make it weird." They had lived in this small room all semester. They had studied here, complained here, laughed here. Park Seo had watched Milo fall slowly and stubbornly towards someone he'd spent months pretending not to think about. Milo had watched Park Seo stop pretending that his nightly texts to Leo Vance were just networking. Neither of them had made it weird. This had taken discipline. Leo and I are getting lunch in town before the cars leave, Park Seo said. I know, Milo said. I wasn't asking for permission. I know that too. Milo sat up. He looked at the desk where the match letter sat, still neatly folded. He picked it up. Seo. Thank you, for this semester. Park Seo looked at his coffee mug. He made a sound that was not words but communicated a great deal. Don't, he said, or I'll cry and then I'll be annoyed at myself for crying and it'll ruin lunch. Milo smiled. Okay. I do want to say one thing though. Go ahead. Park Seo looked at him. You didn't bend. This whole semester people underestimated you and you didn't bend. You just stayed yourself, and you let him come to you, and you never compromised what you needed. He paused. I just wanted to say that out loud, because someone should. Milo looked at his roommate, his friend, the person who had eaten noodles and watched the window and said the right thing at the right time, more times than Milo could count. You're going to make yourself cry, Milo said. I'm already almost there, Park Seo said. Get out of this room before I ruin my credibility. Milo laughed. He got out of the room. Kale was in the courtyard. He was standing near the east garden wall, looking at the frost on the stone path, and he turned when he heard Milo's footsteps on the steps. He was in his regular jacket, bag over one shoulder, and he looked like himself, steady, precise, a little serious, except that his eyes, when they found Milo, were none of those things. They were just warm. I have something for you, Kale said. He held out an envelope. Milo looked at it, then at Kale. Is this the letter? One of them. Kale's expression was carefully controlled, but not the cold kind of control. The kind you use when something matters and you want to deliver it right. Leo told me people need to hear things out loud. I decided this was the closest I could manage. Milo took the envelope. He looked at his name on the front in Kale's handwriting. Then he opened it. He read. It took a little while. The letter was not short. It started with Milo. And then 2.5 pages of careful, honest, slightly stiff writing that had clearly been reread and edited many times, because the handwriting was neat in some places and more pressured in others, the way writing gets when the person is feeling the thing more strongly as they go. It talked about the courtyard, about the study room, about cherry blossoms and an umbrella and a Ferris wheel, about a family name that had taught him rank over everything, and one person who had quietly dismantled that lesson without even trying. Near the end it said, I don't know if what I'm offering is worth what I said when we met, but I would like to spend a long time finding out, if you'll let me. Not because of a match document, because you are the only person in a long time who has made me want to be better than I was yesterday. And at the very bottom, in smaller writing, like it had been added later, your laugh sounds like something you find when you weren't looking for it. I've been trying to describe it for months, and that's the best I have. Milo read that line twice. He folded the letter. He put it back in the envelope. He was very carefully not looking at Kale, because his eyes were doing something traitorous, and he needed a moment. Kale, he said. Yes. This is very dramatic. I know. 2.5 pages. I had things to say. Milo looked up. His eyes were bright and warm, and not even pretending to be neutral anymore. You said your laugh sounds like something you find when you weren't looking for it, he said. Kale met his gaze. Yes. That was the journal entry, the one you said you couldn't describe. I figured it out eventually. Milo looked at him for a long moment. The frost on the courtyard path sparkled in the December morning light. Somewhere across the campus, someone was playing music badly from a dorm window, and it was somehow exactly right. I kept the first teacup, Milo said. The one you left outside the door. Kale blinked. The paper cup? It was empty. I washed it. It's on my desk. Milo looked at his hands, then back up. I kept it because I think part of me knew, even when I was trying very hard not to know, that something was there, and I didn't want to lose the proof of it. Kale looked at him. Something in his expression did the thing it had been practicing all semester. It let go. Let down the last of the careful distance just showed up, open and uncomplicated. He stepped forward. Milo tilted his head up. Kale raised one hand and held it open, flat, between them. A question, not a declaration, not a claim. Just a door, left open. Milo put his hand in it. They stood like that in the cold winter courtyard, hands held, morning frost all around them, while somewhere up on the third floor of the dormitory, Park Seo looked out the window, saw them, and immediately had to sit down. He texted Leo a single word. Finally. Leo's reply came immediately. I know I'm looking from the east window. Why are we both crying? This is so embarrassing. Worth it, though. Worth it. Later, much later, after the cars had gone and the semester had formally closed, and Kale had, with great intention, walked Milo to the academy gates and stood there long enough that the goodbye was not quite a goodbye. Milo sat in the back seat of the scholarship transport with his bag on his lap and Park Seo asleep on his shoulder, and he thought about the envelope in his jacket pocket. He thought about a courtyard and an orange juice puddle and the worst first meeting in the history of this or any other academy. He thought about a sneer that had been covering something the person who said it didn't yet have words for. He thought about study rooms and umbrellas and Ferris wheels and paper cups of tea, about a journal, about 2.5 pages of careful honesty that had been rewritten probably 4 times. He thought about a hand held open in a winter courtyard, asking instead of assuming. He pulled out the envelope and looked at his name on the front. Then he smiled, not the small, careful one he used in public, not the one he practiced staying neutral around, but the real one, the unguarded one, the one that Kale had apparently been trying to describe for 2 months. Park Seo, who was not quite as asleep as he appeared, smiled into Milo's shoulder. Good, Park Seo murmured. Milo looked out the window at the road ahead of them. Yeah, he said, good. The Ashford family came around, slowly, then all at once, the way stubborn things usually do. Vera helped. Kale's patience helped more. And Milo, when he finally met Kale's father at a family dinner 6 months later, looked him in the eye and shook his hand and said, "Nice to meet you," with the exact same steadiness he had used in a courtyard when a boy tried to make him feel small. Kale's father did not say much that evening, but when he left, he told Vera privately, "He doesn't bend." Vera smiled. "No," she said, "he doesn't." Leo and Park Seo went on their first actual date 2 weeks into the new semester, and argued the entire time about what constituted a date, which meant it was obviously a date. They are still arguing about this. They are very happy. And as for Kale Ashford, the most insufferable alpha at Haven Ridge Academy, the boy who sneered and then woke up to an empty space where a scent used to be, the boy who wrote 2.5 pages in a leather journal and left tea outside a door before anyone was awake to see it. He never did stop looking for Milo in every room he walked into. He just stopped pretending he wasn't.